Hello everybody. Welcome to the viewers of Dataquest. So we will have our, CIO talks where we will, in a series of video interviews, we'll look at the detailed role of the CIO. And this time we have with us Vinod Sivarama Krishnan, Chief Information Officer of Indus Towers Limited. Welcome, Vinod.
Thank you so much, Sunil.
Yeah. So I'll just get, straight to it. So the first question I have is, how much has the role of the CEO changed in the last couple of decades? And what further changes can we expect in the years to come?
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Sunil, for that question. I think, let me say when I started in IT now, a good 30 years back, I certainly could not have imagined the journey that we've taken, in terms of the quality and the depth of the role that we have. I think it's always been surprising to me that given how much dependence there is on this function as a key propelling function of our work, that should not the position that CIOs occupy organizationally be commensurate with the level of dependence that exists on them. And I think what we're beginning to see over the years is that the CIO is quickly becoming a pillar of the management team, and in the same way, for instance, that in a factory environment the head of manufacturing would have. I think the importance of the role is being recognized, and obviously that is leading to selection and advancement of those people that are actually able to bring that strategic lift to the role and create that level of infrastructure, for want of a better word, that allows the company to operate. Going forward, I think one of the things that we've always wondered when it comes to CIOs is how much of our job is science, how much of it is an art, and so on. And I think in a very good way, we are heading towards the part where the CIO's role becomes a science. That is where you are more in terms of the accepted management theory of what is your role in the organization and how does that role impact the organization. What you're seeing, for instance, with chief data officers or chief digital officers is just highlighting those other facets of the role that were always there, that were never as prominent perhaps as they are now. And with those pieces, I think this role is getting fleshed out very nicely and stabilizing very quickly to be one of those pillar or foundational roles of leadership in the organization. And I think you'll see much more of that.
So another, one of our interest areas was telecom. You must have, you have worked in various sectors, but what about telecom? How is the role of CIO different or the same in the telecom sector?
One of the very interesting things about telecom as a domain is really the close convergence between the operational technologies that is used, in the telecom business versus the information technology that is used there. And if much more now than before, where if you look at it fundamentally, the telecom industry's own equipment is nothing but IT equipment of a different nature. And I think that is both great because it gives us a relevance in a business scenario that is somewhat, higher, but also a challenge because you have to now expand your own vistas in order to support when it comes to areas like IoT, when it comes to areas like operationally improving performance using information technology. You have a higher bar in a sense in a telecom organization. The other part I'd like to mention certainly is scale and data. Telecom is one of those industries that generates data, disproportionately relative to other industries. And I think recognizing that and handling that and operating at scale, these are some of the things I think that are the nuances of telecom that make IT both more challenging and more rewarding in our sphere. And I can certainly say that perhaps second to retail, telecom is one of the most challenging sectors for professionals in the information technology world.
So that's interesting. And also another thing, like even though hopefully it is behind us, but it is still like the elephant in the room. The pandemic saw a sea change. So has the industry upgraded the way it should have done? And are we now ready for more tech and business changes to ensure BCP going forward into the future?
I would actually say that while many, I think, might say yes to that, and at a very apparent level, the answer is yes. I think the true answer is no. I think we were very good, as an information technology community in finding those quick fixes and finding those things to do that helped us, tide through a very difficult time. But have we fundamentally retooled our infrastructures? Have we fundamentally recreated flexibility in our ways of working? I'm not sure. And there's a reason for that, Sunil. It is because flexibility of your systems, of your infrastructure, of your applications comes at a significant cost. And as the pandemic ended and as your business as usual resumed, your normal business requirements, your demands of IT in terms of improved functionality, in terms of digitization, these things came back to the table, and in many cases have come back with a vengeance. Now, that project of how do I retool my architecture, how do I make myself flexible by design, how do I spend money on that? That has gotten pushed slightly lower in the list of priorities. And I think, a lot of people now understand it. The good news is when you have that discussion in the boardroom, there is an understanding which says, oh, what if it happens again? But in some ways, that understanding is overtaken by your more immediate pressures on your business and top line and bottom line and so on and so forth. That I think the smart companies and the smart CIOs should be devoting uh, a substantial percentage of their efforts to basically retooling their architecture. I can tell you that while I might be engaging with my functional peers much more in terms of top line and bottom line, I am certainly engaging with my team, and the efforts that I am bringing, a lot of my attention is going towards how do we retool our architecture to be flexible, because I know that should something happen again, there will be no excuse for forward thinking CIO to say, I got overtaken by business priorities. So I think whether it's on the overall business agenda or not, it is certainly on our agenda to take care of this.
So, I mean, that's quite an interesting perspective, usually, that has come out of it. So, I mean, you have answered a lot of things, quite interesting. One of the things you mentioned was IoT some time back. So, I would like to look at, emerging tech like IoT, Industry 4.0. How is all this going to change the landscape?
So, we've always looked at technology in a very interesting way. From a model point of view, our industry is great for new technology. Things keep coming. And the way that I've always looked at any new technology is how does this help me to solve past and current and future problems, right? Because I mean, the way that you look at a technology piece, whether it is artificial intelligence, whether it's ML, is to say, look, I'm sitting with these problems and I anticipate these further problems coming in, and how do you apply this technology? Is it the answer to the present or future problems? And if it is not, how is it evolving towards that direction? So, what we look at, I think, as CIOs is really, does this technology mean something? And then there is an element which says, is it ready yet for prime time? And you'll hear from many CIOs that we do a lot of POCs. We keep our hands engaged with each one of these technologies to understand both the stage of maturity of the technology, as well as, is it the answer? Is it really the answer to our problems? Does it work? And so on. So when I look at AI, when I look at ML, when I look at IoT, these are not new technologies anymore. These have been around for a while. What has changed is typically when you get into a situation where you want to start leveraging these technologies, and there's a certain critical mass, then there is a maturity of the product, there's an evolution of the the services and products which are native there. And now you look at AI, or now you look at IoT, or now you look at ML, and the products that are there are so much more mature. We are that much closer to being able to take these out of a box and start, connecting them up the way that we used to with more mature technologies. And I just think that this is an evolution. In and of itself, no technology is a silver bullet for all our problems. It is how we are able to deploy it to solve the business problems, and I think that is getting better. Those cycles are getting shorter. It is no longer a proof of concept as much as, finding the right product within what is already available and applying it to the problem. So certainly these are promising, and certainly these are now much more production ready than they may have been, 3 or 4 years back. I think CIOs are approaching these with a lot of confidence because we can see where it is going.
And I'd like to end with, the hottest topic of the day, because you even talked of AI and ML. That's of course Chat GPT. So I'm just wondering, how will Chat GPT transform the way we do business?
So, one of the lovely things about something like Chat GPT that comes along is it doesn't transform in and of itself. What it is able to do is transform our imagination. It is able to fire our imagination in a very real way to say, oh, here is a technology I didn't know that it can do this. Now, and now that I have this technology, the same point I made before, how does this affect me? How, if I were, for instance, in the education sector, I would be very worried by something like this, because now, how do I ensure the validity of what I'm getting? Do I know that, my students are turning in assignments that are done by themselves or by ChatGPT? What do I need to do there? I think the biggest challenge is really to those who ignore this as a passing fad or a phenomenon, because it will have impact.
Okay.
Over time, there are clever people who will figure out how to apply this technology in every facet of their daily life. Now, when it comes to business, however, we don't have that luxury, except for the vibrant startup community that seems to have a lot of bandwidth to
Right.
delve into these technologies. I think for us who come from more established businesses is to understand what potential the tool has. I think it has a lot of potential and a lot of simplification in terms of how you find information in a company.
Right.
For instance, enterprise search itself, even though you have a Google, enterprise search is still a concept that many of us struggle with,
True.
because we know that the information is somewhere in my company.
Mm.
But how do I find it, and how do I find it quickly enough that I can use it? Now you have tools which are organizing this information in very intuitive ways that are able to communicate with users. I don't need to have a team to write a query and come back with an answer. I know I'm looking at something that has already got all the data and is able to put it together somewhat intelligently.
Right.
And I think, it's very exciting. It obviously makes a lot of people think about it. It makes a lot of people work on it. And these are really the golden steps, because once all this happens, the
Right.
technology starts maturing and ripening very quickly. And I think, a third or fourth version of this will be so sophisticated and will have so much of the obvious problems tackled
Yeah.
that it will just provide us so many good consequences from the business point of view for us to really put it into our stacks. I, for one, have always been a big advocate of, expert systems and knowledge-based systems which take your company's knowledge and give you the solution.
Right.
And to me, this is really the sweet spot where Chat GPT is aiming, and many other tools I'm sure will come out now that Chat GPT has come out in the same space. As a technologist, I'm just super excited, and as a person, I'm just super excited by it. As a business CIO, I think I'll wait for a while till I can start using it in my stack.
Right.
But I'm looking at it very carefully and enjoying what I see at multiple perspectives. I think, these are the kind of technologies that help us a lot, because users look at this and engage with this and give us, remind us
Right.
what we are doing in these roles when we see things like this. And I think it's just magnificent the way it has caught the attention of the world. At a time when there are so many weighty topics and wars and other things going on, I think ChatGPT takes more inches of newsprint than
Right.
perhaps. And I'm wondering how many of those articles are written by ChatGPT
Oh, yeah.
themselves.
Absolutely.
So it's bringing a very nice meta
Yeah.
concept when it comes to these
Right.
things.
Right.
But I think there are certain professions where I would really be very, very careful what I do next.
Right.
Journalism, the curation of news. And sometimes it makes me happy that I'm not directly in the line of fire of this technology, but it's still very great to see it. I think it's always welcome when you find technologies of this nature.
Yeah. So I think that's a nice positive hot take on ChatGPT. That's a good place to end the interview. Thank you. Thank you so much for your insights. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sunil, and as always, a pleasure to talk to you on Dataquest.